Oh, rainbow boxers. This title is a choice, Frederic, but before you think this is some alt-right video, it's not. Not here. Never. Hi friends, my name's Frederic. Bisexuality. Besides being a great color combination, what is it? What's the difference between bi, poly, and pansexual? Is there a difference? Questions historians have been debating for centuries. By historians, I mean Twitter. If you're new here, I do a series on my channel called Making Up My Mind, where basically I put on some makeup that looks rather stunning while talking about a topic that interests me, and it focuses on pop culture, politics, or queer stuff. And I already know someone's gonna say, Frederic, you are using the Q word. First of all, it's in the acronym. Second of all, while I understand some people back then were ridiculed for it, even now, you know, I was called that in middle school. You know what words and definitions do? Evolve. Whoa. You know what people can do? Reclaim it. Oh my god. And you know what I'm comfortable with? Being called that and calling myself that, because I just want to call myself that. So if it makes you uncomfortable, you can not watch, because you are allowed to not watch, and I am allowed to call myself that. Anyways, I've had thoughts about this for a while because growing up, I've heard the word bisexual, I've read up on the definition, and then I recently was like, that isn't the definition I grew up with. There's a lot of people online that have differing definitions of what it means. And the main theme of this video, let me just start my makeup. Everything I use will be linked, by the way. There's always arguments within each community. And I think especially during Pride Month, it's rather stupid. Yup! Unnecessary.
That's true.
I think it's a lot of miscommunication and just not respecting people online because we don't think about the positions other people are in. So I would like to provide some context. I'm not going to focus on how people portray bisexuals yet. That's a whole other video. This is just about people within the look at the community. Lake Beauty. The biggest debate I always see is, what does bisexual mean? Is it being attracted to two genders? Is it being attracted to male and female? Being attracted to more than one gender? And a lot of people have problems with how people are defining it as bisexuals. One side of the community, it's only two. The other side, it is just more than one. First topic of discussion, does it really mean two? Let's just look at the term bi. It does mean two, and I'm going to assume that a majority of people who initially learned the word bisexual probably thought two as well, because we can jump to that conclusion. Personally, I learned what bi meant before bisexual. There's a lot of words that also use bi when it does mean two. Bivalve, binary. I don't even mean gender, I just mean like binary code. So I think it's safe to say that when you first learn about it, and a lot of us do learn about it when we're very young because we have the power of the internet now, we might jump to the conclusion that it does mean two. In some sources, you can still see that it says two. The issue that people have with this is that it follows the gender binary, which not everyone agrees about. Also, if you're wondering, I just go by any pronouns. Blair White's not gonna like this. I can't tell you how many times I've seen online, if you say it's bisexual and you mean more than one gender, then just say you're poly or pan. Which I will also say, not necessarily false. Poly and pan do include more genders. But a lot of people within the bisexual community disagree and say, no, bi has always meant two. And that is where I want to bring up this source from 1990. It's a bisexual manifesto, if you will. I highly recommend reading the text. It just in short says that it is not secluded to two. Do not assume that bisexuality is binary or duogamous in nature, that we must have two sides or that we must be involved simultaneously with both genders to be fulfilled human beings. In fact, don't assume that there are two genders. Besides this, there's also just a ton of different ways that people express gender in different cultures. There's Two-Spirit in Native American culture. There's a lot of different versions in Pacific Islander culture. I myself don't know all of the names and terms, but just saying they exist. It's been documented in other cultures long before 1990. However, the general public, at least in the US, was not that there were more than two genders, because our society revolved around two genders only. So pretty. So if it didn't ever mean two genders, why did the general public assume it did? Why did we go about saying it was two genders for a while until, I'll say, like the past 10 years? And this is just something that unfortunately happens. It's just how history works. Sometimes it doesn't follow the actual text. Most of the time things get mistranslated or misinterpreted to further another group's agenda. And while I did not live in the 1990s, I am not going to doubt that the majority of people did not agree with the idea of more than one gender. I also have an article from the Rolling Stone of all places, and I want to read this out. In the queer community right now, we have a tendency of getting hung on sorry, I'm terrible, on specific words rather than the person. And in my own fluidity, I'm really attracted to this idea that it doesn't have to be one thing. Bisexuality, pansexuality, sexually fluid, queer, and simply not doing labels are all different ways people identify to indicate that they are not exclusively attracted to either men or women. The truth is, however, there's confusion even amongst members of the LGBTQ community as to what these words mean, particularly when it comes to bisexuality. In fact, the bisexual community doesn't even agree on what it means to be bisexual. The term pansexual was birthed out of this confusion and to create a definitive and more inclusive label. This has led to infighting within members of the community who are upset that their bisexual identity is being replaced by another label. I haven't seen that personally. I wouldn't know if there's bi on pan crime, but I would hope not, because in my opinion, all of these labels can't exist in one vacuum because well, there's already a lot, and the point of these labels and expanding them is to create less confusion within the community and to people who just want to know. Because while I think everyone wishes there was never labels to begin with, we just don't live in that society, and we can't just say don't do that, because labels have weight to them, and if we ignore that, then you're privileged enough to not have to care. Interrupting this broadcast, I just wanted to put on some cute glitter. Look at that, look how cute. Oh my god, that's illegal. This should not be allowed. Frederic! Frederic! I've unlocked the secret. Glitter fixes everything. So now let's talk about poly and pansexual. If we look at the prefix, poly means many, pan means all. So many genders, all genders. If you Google polysexual, a synonym is pansexual. It's almost like a circle is a square. Whoa. Dumbass. It's almost like a rectangle is not a square, but a square is a rectangle. Let's go by the definition by that is more updated. If it means more than one, poly technically still means more than one. Pan also means more than one. So how do you figure out which one you are then? This is where I decided to go to Twitter and ask you all, how did you find out? To the bi, poly, pan community, how did you find out which one? What led you to choose? Pan. I have heard from all the adult LGBT I knew at the time that bi meant just two and pan meant all, so pan, like it's hot. I just got bi vibes and who I get along with. I recently joined my first poly relationship and so far so good. I don't really care about looks. I can't really put my finger on how I knew. I just wanted to be with them. It just kind of happened. Bi because men are hot, women are hot, and everything in between and beyond are hot. Love that answer. That was from my artist who made that poster, which y'all can still get. I say that I'm pan because it seems to be the most accurate when describing how I feel. I don't really like to label myself, but it's easier to tell people that I'm pan than say, I don't know, I just like them for their personality. For me as a pan person, I've always been pulled towards all kinds of people based on common interests we had and have always found everyone attractive. At some point I was bi, but I realized that my attraction to people wasn't based off their gender, but just them. Pansexual and down with being poly in some cases too. I realized the usual at first. I'm attracted to people based on the person, not the gender and such. Then it was more so that I was attracted to people based on how well they fit into my type, which is negative? Oh, that's not a negative, that's an extension. Dumbass. Which is pretty chill as long as I felt like me and my partner were that connected and in love that we could sleep with other people. Oh, they go on to talk about being poly, but when I mean poly, I don't mean polyamorous. That's another thing. Probably should have clarified that. It just really took time to realize, and pan can also fluctuate between bi and pan, which can cause a lot of confusion when it comes to labels. Bi just felt right from the very beginning. I tried out a few different things, but bi was just what felt the best. Also because purple is my favorite color and it's in the flag. Being pan to me is kind of being gender blind, for the lack of a better term. I like people without being much regard to their gender. I now know bi has evolved past solely two genders, but I've identified with pan and I'm sticking with it. While I personally use bi, pan interchangeably, I had a friend that I had a huge crush on who came out as trans, and those feelings didn't change when this friend decided to transition. So I had to pick. Pan fits me better because the gender didn't matter to me. I am bi and poly. I am technically pan omni, but I just prefer bi honestly. For a long time, I didn't have a label because it was just so complicated. I want to emphasize that part. Don't mind me, just covering my mustache. Don't tell me it's too orange. I know. Maybe I like an orange mustache, okay? Okay, you really don't need this much. I don't want people to assume that you have to color correct this much to look natural. You don't. I just went overboard. I wasn't paying attention. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm not a makeup beauty guru. All I knew was that I wasn't straight. But then one day my friends and I were talking about our orientation. I explained to them I don't really have a label and If I like them, then I like them. Gender wasn't a problem for me. It didn't matter as long as I liked the person for who they are in a sense. Then they explained pan to me, a term I never heard before. When I first came out, I identified as bi, because at the time, I wasn't aware of other genders and simply thought that people could fall under being boy or girl, and that aligned with my definition of bi at the time, which was attraction to two genders. Even then, bi didn't feel like enough to define what I felt. As I got older and met more people with different gender identities, and then going through my own experience, I switched to using pan because it felt more encompassing than bi and poly. I identify as bi because gender does play a role, and it may be different things depending on their gender. I'm pretty open, but I do feel like I make a distinction when it comes to my attraction. As a bi person, it was the label that fit me best, defined as attraction to people of genders like yours and different from yours. I identified as bi for 2 years before finding the term omni. I did tons of research looking into it, and the label just felt more comfortable. What is omni? I forgot. People who identify as omni are attracted to those of all gender identities and sexual orientations. Is there a difference between that and pan then? Is my question. Let's keep going. I usually switch between bi and pan depending on who I'm talking to. That way, in case you're not familiar with pan, I can easily say bi. However, I think pan is fitting for me because I am more attracted to someone's personality. Bisexuality felt restricted to me because I was always attracted to just more than male and female. I discovered pan eventually. I identify as bi rather than pan solely because I have a preference. I'm bi, but I could see myself dating both genders, but I'm currently questioning if I'm pan. I determined that I like both guys and girls. I think that what we can take from this is that everyone has their own personal definition of what their identity means to them. Hey, editing Frederic here. I'm going to pop in a couple times. This is the first time. Hey, the main thing about community, we're already separate, okay? Like, we have to find ourselves online mainly. Even in person, it's kind of hard unless you join like a gay club in school, which maybe you're not out, so you can't do that. Or there's just no club in your school because you don't live in that type of area. I remember looking at those replies and people were like, I just prefer the flag, or I just vibe more with the community. And that's also why definitions become so blurred, because when you already have a definition between all three sexualities that are very similar, one becomes the most popular in general just because, I mean, if you look at Google Trends, barely anyone talks about poly and omni. Not to diminish those, but people just lean more towards bi and pan because bi was talked about way more than pan. I mean, I'm not saying that other people don't exist. I'm just saying when people search for things about their own selves, bi comes up first. It's always come up first before everything else. Maybe not nowadays. I didn't realize pan was that popular. I was just checking, but that's probably why a lot of people just associate it with bi. So we should just take everything with a tiny, minuscule, microscopic grain of salt. Bye. Oh my god, did you get that? Did you get that joke? I didn't mean to do that on purpose. And at the end of the day, they're all kind of the same because they do technically fall under this bisexual umbrella. Not in the sense that when you say queer, there's many different labels under it. What I mean is like, there's the color blue, but then you got cyan, cerulean, turquoise, royal blue, dark blue, light blue, sky blue. They're all a little bit the same, but we just have different ways of describing each because some might say it's a green-blue, I might say it's a blue-green. So I hope this clears up the idea of bi just being two genders. I mean, if you follow me and you still think that, or you just think that there's only two genders, I don't know why you follow me, but hey, open your mind a little. Go off, I don't care. Let's just keep it nice in the comments, okay? Because the last thing I want in life is for my comment section to become toxic like Twitter. We don't have that here. Don't bring that European nonsense into this Asian household. Sick and tired of y'all debating on Twitter. There is no point. I have seen too many times when even this, like I was discussing this idea of bisexuality prior to the question, I got some DMs saying like, hey, I don't appreciate the way you worded this. And then I had to expand and apologize and say, no, I actually meant this, and then blah, insert paragraph. And then they're like, oh, I understand now. But I couldn't say all of that because Twitter has such a limited amount and I can't verbally express what I'm saying unless I'm doing this to you. Commenting, typing, anything online besides this, even this is a little bit limiting. So people's intentions don't normally come across correctly. Just like how a lot of people in those responses, they maybe have said both genders. They might have said guys and girls, male and female. Do I honestly think that all of those people who said two, both, male, female, guys, girls, believe in the gender binary only? No. No. I just think that they use what's comfortable with them. They use the terms they grew up with because we all grew up with that. To say that you didn't, I mean, good for you. Good job. Somehow you didn't learn that. And I mean that genuinely. Like, I am glad you did not have to learn about that because the majority of us have to unlearn that now. Which brings me to my next topic. Why are y'all fighting? I don't even care if someone is being blank phobic. You know in your hearts that you will not convince them through a conversation online? Is it truly worth your effort to put in when you know they're probably gonna troll back? If the conversation goes past 10 responses, it's probably not gonna go anywhere, y'all. And also, if you want to convince someone of something otherwise, you have to like literally put yourself in their position and go from their mindset. Example, me talking to my dad about why we shouldn't be racist. I had to literally say like, well, what if you were in this position and then you did blank and then this group did blank to you? How would that make you feel? You have to like rewire their brain and use a reverse psychology. It takes a lot of effort because you gotta try to agree with them at some points. But that's not what happens online. You don't see people having a, oh, I hear your opinion. Let me take that opinion and politely respond to that and give you another insight. It's kind of more like, you're gonna die one day because you're a terrible human being. How dare you say this about this, blah, blah, blah. TikTok, Twitter, YouTube comments, it's full of that because the majority of people who are arguing are under 18 and we got a lot of opinions because we're very angsty about life. Because life sucks. By the way, I'm 20, just saying. But I know what it's like to be in that position. I've been there, done that. And normally I don't do this, but it just looks fun. Don't do it like this. Don't, just put on the brush first. There's something when it comes to queer people where if you misspeak one thing, Joey, what's your opinion on bi people? I want you to listen to how Joey says Q word. Queer. He made it sound like a slur somehow. I'm trying to educate. I feel the cat hair everywhere. Sorry for the interruption. What I meant to say was a tidal wave of people will wash over you and drown you because you misspoke one word. And it's not something like when a straight person says a slur and they're well aware of it. It's when someone within the queer community has the best intentions and you can tell, but they just misspoke one thing. One little inaccuracy. I've been there, okay? I didn't know the history of lavender in lesbian culture, and then I got 100 responses telling me about it, and I was like, one person was enough. I told y'all. It's like we don't read the comment section before replying anymore. I'm going off track, but we will go back onto the field. A lot of the people who commented about why they're bi, pan, poly used some words that technically go with the gender binary. And I can already predict that if this was on a public forum, they would get a lot of fire back because they used that. I can see comments saying, so you don't believe in more than two genders. No, I don't think you can just spill those words out because these are children. Like, they might be just learning these terms. We can't go out here and attack every single person within our queer community to further ostracize them and make them want to leave. That's not how a community works. We are meant to educate. Elders are meant to educate people who are younger, and sometimes it's the other way. But if your first instinct is to attack, I would really suggest, like, think about where you were at that point. I know it's hard for us to do that because it's like so easy to attack online because we have this shield of anonymity. You don't have to be in the public eye, you can just hide behind the screen. But what were you doing at like the ages of 12 to 16? Were you familiar with every single word that relates to gender? Did you know that bisexuality can also fall under poly and pan? Do you know your history behind bisexuality? Do you know what sapphic means? Do you know what, I don't know, abrosexual means? No. Okay, and if you do, congratulations, but that is not the majority of people. I already got eyeshadow on my white. Ugh, it's fine. At least I look pretty. I am still learning about this stuff. I'm learning about all these different ways that you can define things and how, in actuality, none of it really matters. The point is just to make us feel good and feel like we have a community. But let's think about when we say ladies and gentlemen. Does that include everyone? Technically, no. Does that mean that person is deliberately not including everyone? Not necessarily, and I really doubt they do. But most of the time, it's just simply easier in terms of like, it's what you're used to. It literally uses less syllables. Sometimes not everyone wants to say ladies and gentlemen and other non-binaries. On TikTok, we see to the girlies and gays, and then you can see a comment, what about the days? And I'm not saying we shouldn't say that. It's always okay to educate like that, but it's not okay to attack them for not saying it because they don't necessarily feel that way. And I just try to look at it through a realistic sense. They probably just are used to saying that. You grow up, you hear guys and girls. You grow up, you hear ladies and gentlemen. When we say hi guys or hey guys, we assume that guys is a gender neutral term, but it really isn't. Most of us are fine with it. Like, we can see past it, but in the actual term, like, it just isn't, grammatically speaking. So that's why people sometimes say, hey y'all, hey friends. That's why that's my intro now, because I just don't want to offend. It's not my goal in life. If that's your goal in life, I don't know what's wrong with you. My babies. This baby. That baby. Another case, when people make bi jokes, sometimes it's like, oh, you play for both teams. The joke has been used within the bi community as just like an inside joke, and we've probably seen it in some cheesy TV show, and it's produced by 30-year-old white men, and it features 26-year-old actors who play 16-year-olds who also have intercourse. Stop that. But is that necessarily trying to be I don't know what the word is, like phobic to other genders? I'd like to say no. I like to think that people have the best intentions with stuff, and at the end of the day, people just want to have a laugh within their own community. And I want to emphasize, it is never wrong to learn this stuff. It's okay to be like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean it that way. I will do my best to include to be like sympathetic and try to include others for the sake of being inclusive. But that's not going to happen instantly with anyone. Think of AJ, who is a great YouTuber, by the way. If you don't know her, she reacts to music and different artists. She used to say, "What is going on, dudes and dudettes?" And what happened was people politely said, "Hey, have you thought about a different word to include me, because I'm non-binary?" And then she started saying, "What is going on, dudes, dudettes, and non-binaries?" But I bet you someone might go back to that old video, see that she didn't say it earlier, and then try to cancel her on Twitter. What makes our community so combative about any of these issues? Because there's a lot of them besides this. And I can understand the other side. Like, I don't necessarily agree with it all the time, but I can get it. People are very passionate about their own identity and sexuality because it is who they are. Maybe they had to defend that for most of their life. It's your found community. Of course you're going to be defensive about it. But what most of us fail to do in general is to allow growth or see their perspective before commenting. Let's go back to that Rolling Stones article for a second. The prefix bi, as we're all aware, means two. Because of this, many folks, perhaps even the majority of people, believe that a bisexual person is attracted to only two genders, cisgender men and cisgender women. Members of the queer community who believe this to be the definition believe that bisexuality perpetuates a gender binary. They don't believe it's inclusive of transgender people and gender non-conforming people. This is the emphasis, okay, listen. Given that bi means two, that's a reasonable belief to conclude. It's probably something that we all concluded early on. Not the part that it's exclusive to non-binary and transgender, I just mean like that it means two. However, many bi people now use a renowned definition created by bisexual activist Robin Oak. As stated on her website, "I call myself bisexual because I acknowledge that I have in myself the potential to be attracted romantically and or sexually to people of more than one sex and or gender, not necessarily at the same time, not necessarily in the same way, and not necessarily to the same degree." That's a wonderful definition. Problem is, it's very long. You will never say that to someone. You don't say that to your dad when you're coming out, do you? We just say, oh, it's two genders. We just say, oh, it means male and female. It means guys and girls, because it's easy. It's probably simple for people to understand, because the problem with coming out is your parents, your friends, people outside of this community will not understand all of that initially, or maybe they don't even want to. I've seen enough stories of people saying, there was no way I was gonna tell my dad I was pan. I just had to say bi. It already took me years for him to accept that I'm bi. He is no way ready to accept that there's more than two genders, which is not fun. You know, but not everyone also wants to have that conversation because it's not always safe for them. I know there's people who are like very passionate about being activists and trying to change everyone because it's like, this is our future at stake, but not everyone has that energy to put into their own parents because one, they probably live with them. Knowing these people, because we're all young here, still in school, mind you, need a home, can't afford their own yet, they can't put themselves in that danger just to be correct about the definition, just to provide clarity. Some pan folks even go a step further. There's the argument to be had that people use all the time that bi is exclusionary, feeds into the binary of gender. And I know that for me personally, that's not the case. A lot of people have said that bi is trans exclusionary, but trans is not a gender itself. It's a descriptor word for how people express their gender. Remember that manifesto that said it's not just confined to two genders, that it includes trans people as well? So even back then, people had those beliefs and it was written down, but culturally, did that happen? Sadly, no, because transphobia is present and prevalent everywhere. Point blank, period, end of story. Let's double down on this, okay? Every community, even inside the queer community, has transphobic people and history to it. Why else did ballroom happen? Why do trans people still say gay bars aren't accepting of them? It still happens to this day. And I would like to get into the idea of colorism as well, but like that's, once again, another topic. I can't do everything in one video. I would love to just make a video called The Problem with the LGBT Community. But that would be a whole movie and a sequel and a book and a podcast. I had a conversation on Twitter where someone was like, it was never trans exclusive. And what I meant to say for me was, while on paper it is not trans exclusive, not everyone feels that way. So that's why they go to other communities and labels. And I feel like they should be allowed to do that because they're allowed to feel that way. If they feel ostracized, they have to find something. And I know some people get offended when other people say that sexuality feels trans exclusionary to me. How could you say that bisexuality is trans exclusive? It was never the case. Possibly, maybe in your community, online, in person, where you grew up, it didn't feel that way. But to them, the other party saying it, probably not. And I think they have the right to have that belief because it's what they experienced. So it's up to us and other people to stop that language, to stop the idea of every community being transphobic. Because while it doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to associate one sexuality with the idea of being trans exclusionary because it's every sexuality that is. It's person to person, case by case. Twitter group by Twitter group. TikTok comment by TikTok comment. Hey, editing Frederic here. I just wanted to clarify some things because I already see it coming. There's Remy, by the way, hiding behind our TV. I'm grouping everyone here together right now. Example, if you say, I like men, and also trans men, I don't think you're being the ally that you think you're being because you're like kind of ostracizing that group. The point is to say that trans men are men. So just say, I am attracted to men. And if you do say you like men, but then you say you don't like trans men, then you don't like men. You like people with penises then. Get it? Got it? Good. Figure out your own definition of men first before commenting, by the way. Tell me what makes a man, and then we'll talk. And don't just say it's because of their penis. If you like masculine people with penises, just say that. Just say that. It's fine. You're allowed to have that feeling. But that's the thing when people talk about bisexuality and transphobia, just because when people say, I like males and females, they'll sometimes say like, and trans women and trans men, but you just know, or even worse, they will say the opposite. They don't like trans women or men. And they'll associate that with the idea of gender when we just talked about trans men it's not a gender, it's a descriptor. Identity, if you will. It's not a sexuality. Trans itself, not a sexuality. Further on the article, this is partly why people don't like identifying with any sexual or gender identity label. Simply put, it's confusing. And for many, the labels feel limiting. I will also add to this, the labels can also make you feel whole. I'm not here to tell everyone, you don't need your label. You don't need your sexuality. Just be you. Just be who you are. Like, no. Do we wish it could be that way? Sure. In a utopia, this never had to happen. He, she never had to exist. But did our English language evolve that way? No. Also, inherent in your sexuality is an understanding of your own gender. If you're not completely sure if you identify as male or female, then how can you accurately state your sexuality? The way Rolling Stones just came for like 40% of y'all. But I like the way that's phrased. Like, everything is kind of a blur, especially when you're just learning about it. Because you're still developing. You're just learning algebra and you're also trying to learn who you are as a person. Like, that doesn't happen instantly. This contributes to the growing popularity of the reclaimed word queer. Did I want to do that? Do I want to do that? Maybe. Oh, good stretch, Bubby. Interestingly, when said interviewer does wish to identify with sexual labels, as opposed to simply human, he actively changes his label depending on who he's speaking to and what their intention is. This is what I mean when I was talking about when you say bi/pan or like two genders, all genders, depending on the person you're talking to. If I'm talking to somebody who's more conservative and doesn't believe in a non-binary gender, then it's just easier to use the word bi. But if I'm talking to someone who's invested in gender, queer theory, and understands the spectrum, then I'm more comfortable with using the word pan or fluid. However, there's a rich history to the word bisexual, and it would be nice to honor it. The B existed far longer than the P ever did in the acronym, and there's something to be said about that. There's something to be said about standing up for the mothers and fathers, for the community who fought for our rights to embrace a queer identity. Even in this article, it was just mothers and fathers. It's the label we fought for recognition under for decades, and it's the most widely known label. Language isn't a static entity, and words can change meaning over much time. Much like October is no longer the 8th month of the year. What? Why am I just learning about this? Education. Google is free. That's cool, I guess. I don't know what to do with that information. But much like October is no longer the 8th month of the year, I believe the term bisexual has morphed into a different meaning than what it originally was. For others, it's less about history and more about the arduous personal journey it took to finally claim a sexual label, only to be then told that their label is wrong, obsolete, or transphobic, and by members of the same community who are supposed to be embracing them, no less. I am proud to be bisexual. It took me 30 years to get to that point, and it sucks that now I'm comfortable with my sexuality, I'm told I'm not accepting enough because I don't consider myself pan. Pansexuals shouldn't be attacking bisexuals just because there's a new term that's more inclusive. We don't attack gays for not being attracted to women, and we shouldn't attack a bisexual person just because they may not find a trans person attractive. Did we find a theme at the end of this? I am so sorry. Actually, I'm not. I'm not sorry for my oily skin because one of us will not look wrinkly when we're older. But these lights and 80-degree weather, that is this degree for everyone across seas, it's not being forgiving at all. I'm not going to talk about the trans exclusionary things because I personally would like to learn more about it and like the history of all of it and make a dedicated video, but we're going to move on further down the article. Is it transphobic to not be attracted to transgender and gender non-conforming individuals? If so, then are members of the LGBTQ community clinging to a label that's potentially harmful to other members of the community? For some time, I felt compelled to cling onto the bisexual label in a pseudo-noble effort to protect the identity from a perceived diaspora of individuals turning to the term pan. At first, it felt important to continue defending bisexuality as I had always done when members of the straight or gay communities attempted to invalidate or exclude it, which y'all should stop. Stop. I felt like a captain going down with his ship. Over time, this came to be less important than accurately portraying the full spectrum of my sexuality. Nevertheless, everyone I spoke to said that there was room for the larger bi and pan communities and for multiple labels to exist. I think if you talk to someone in person, the majority of people say that. But online, not the case because anyone can say something online. There's room for all of it. We're all here and it's our right to claim whichever label we want. There's also this push for like the bi plus label. Never personally seen it. Interested to know if y'all have seen it too, but basically that's supposed to intentionally encompass pan and poly. And that's the end of the article. Wow, what a giddy. Frederic, what was that? Was that English? I don't think so. So what can we conclude about all of this? The queers do be passionate. Yes, we care a lot about things. I will say that. Sometimes a little bit too much, where we don't try to see eye to eye, we try to go with what fits our definition instead. But a lot of the times when I see these arguments, unless it's someone, remember, unless it's someone who is deliberately being trans, bi, blank phobic, I feel like it's just a lot of children arguing with each other about the same thing. Like, we're not progressing, we're just wasting our time talking about the same thing. It's just that I maybe used a word that you didn't understand or you didn't understand the intention of my words. And then at the end, they all agree on the same thing. It's like, so what did happen here? We were arguing about nothing then. Is it worth a 600 reply chain? You tell me. I'm not here to try to speak for the bi community, obviously. I'm just here to try to provide some more insight to it because I know a lot of my community is, and they wanted me to talk about it. I'm doing it for y'all, okay? So if people cancel me, you're going down this ship with me. I refuse to be left behind like Jack in the Titanic. You will give me another spot on that dresser. Rose, what were you doing? Sorry, I'm very passionate about that movie. Which also, those two characters probably by panic right there. You're gonna see this theme throughout a lot of the future videos talking about the problem with blank. All of it just comes back to we should be more accepting because we already are accepting of some things. No, that's too much. That's too much. Frederic, don't do too much. I'm gonna pretend like that never happened. We're just gonna put 2 hearts there and call it a day. Not everything needs to be glitterified, Frederic. Got it? All right, I think I'm done with my look. Am I ready for school yet? Conclusions. Hopefully. We should be more accepting of people within our community in general. Let's not be so dictating of what other people's labels are online. I don't want to see anyone commenting on some random person's profile pic just because there's a bi flag and be like, are you including trans people as well? Let's not do that, okay? You don't know their story, you don't know their life, you don't even know their age. Let's not try to argue within our own community, okay? We're all here for the same fight. Let's try to push tolerance and, more importantly, acceptance. People be bi. Yeah, people are also poly and pan. Let them live and choose whichever label they're most comfortable with. At the end of the day, they're all kind of the same definition, okay? And if you want to say preferences do matter, by definition, hot take, no. Because it's your preference. It's your preference, not theirs, not the definitions. Your life. Your romantic interests. No one has to know. They're not entitled to it. But let me know your thoughts because this is a whole conversation, okay? I would love to learn more. I also want to clarify, I probably might have messed up some term at some point. Do correct me on that. I will create like a pinned comment if there is a correction I should add. If you want to learn more, just like let's read the comments down below, okay? Let's like actually try to hear other people's perspective who are in this community because I'm just trying to provide insight, not be the voice. I'm not Ariana, Blake, or Kelly. Who's that 4th one? It changes. And I hope you all enjoyed this video. I hope this helps people feel more comfortable with their sexuality. Remember, don't pressure yourself to label something just because you see it online. Your journey, your life, no one else's. Okay, no one can take that from you. Yes, Miso. What's wrong with them? What are y'all doing? Oh my god, what's wrong with them? And as always, subscribe. I post videos every week. Let me know what I should upload next about making up my mind, okay? What other topic in this community should we talk about that isn't talked about enough? Love you all, happy Pride, and also earrings. Buy them. This from Positive Pride. Support them. Really good clothes, actually. Like, when I say how to make Pride merch, it's this. And as always, I love you all. There's dust. I love you all, and everything is less than 3. Now, what have y'all been doing? Little babies, little babies. Hi. Remy, slap your sister. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Get a close up, get a close up. Ooh, 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 ooh. Ooh, rainbow boxers.